Some moments seem ordinary until something hidden flickers beneath the surface, stirring a quiet anticipation. That's the climate of this present energy, a field quietly recalibrating the layers of self that usually go unnoticed. The usual cycles of daily life, schedules, comfort, even the gentle lull of late summer, mask a silent restructuring happening at a level that resists ordinary perception. What if these days weren't just about rest or routine, but actually the start of an inner migration? When habits feel strangely outdated and assumptions start to dissolve, could it be that life is quietly crafting a new outline, just beneath conscious awareness? Pause for a moment and notice. Is there an undercurrent, a subtle invitation to grow beyond familiar patterns? Sometimes the most unremarkable seasons become the hinge on which everything pivots, even if no one is watching. Modern life loves the illusion of stasis. There's a comfort in predictability, in the rituals of late summer, the friendly gatherings, the languid afternoons, the echoes of childhood freedom. But beneath the sunlight and conversation, a deeper pulse is moving. Rather than the loud call of crisis or epiphany, this is more like a slow recalibration, a gentle rearrangement of invisible architecture. It's as if the entire environment is quietly rewriting its script while everyone else assumes the story remains unchanged. When was the last time anyone questioned the foundation holding up the routine? Every August, the background settings are adjusted, relationships, ambitions, even memory itself, all subtly reworked by forces that can't be mapped or measured. Is anyone noticing how these unseen tremors quietly shift the shape of reality? Or does everyone simply return to their routines and assume nothing fundamental has changed? Sometimes life accelerates without warning, like a current under the ground that suddenly bursts through the pavement. The atmosphere thickens, not with confusion, but with a precise restlessness that hints at something overdue. It feels less like being lost and more like waking up and realizing the clock's already ticking, yet no one remembers ever setting the alarm. Is there a hidden checkpoint waiting somewhere ahead? This isn't an ordinary stretch of time, and some unspoken marker is about to reveal itself. Miss it, and the landscape may close before anyone realizes an opening was even there. The shift has already started echoing through the days, disguised as impatience, not chaos. And for those paying close attention, the realignment is already underway. Has anyone else noticed that this week is carrying a flavor that won't fit in last month's recipe? Ordinary weeks let dreams gather dust in the attic. This one is different. Imagine the walls of reality thinning, as if every wish ever whispered in secret finally discovered a secret hatch to slip through. It's not a period for hesitance or waiting for a signal in the sky. The entire moment is heavy with opportunity, like a symphony tuning up for its crescendo after years of silent rehearsal. If the sense of anticipation feels overwhelming, perhaps it's because future possibilities have grown impatient and started knocking on the present, right now. Maybe this is the juncture the deeper self has been steering the story toward all along. It's not disarray, it's the recalibration of coordinates. Sometimes, the world feels like a radio tuning itself to a frequency just barely out of reach. If the signal is matched halfway, movement happens at the speed of intuition, much quicker than logic can track. There's a subtle coalition of forces working behind the scenes, a kind of invisible scaffolding ready to lift what's waiting to become real. Yet, most passers-by remain unaware, brushing off the unease or restlessness as if it's a glitch in the system, never questioning if there's a message coded into the static. How many actually lean into that discomfort long enough to see the scaffolding for what it is? In that moment of engagement, the outlines of a new stage start to materialize, but only for those willing to look at what feels off instead of turning away. Every so often, a passage appears disguised as an ordinary week, but what waits at the end is no repeatable moment. The coming days act as the last stretch of a bridge. Once crossed, there's no reverse. It's the closing sequence of a chapter, where one decision will stand as the division between what was and what will be. As the hours slip by, the sense of pressure rises, not just a call for adjustment, but an insistent force that reshapes what's possible. Are there many who sense that the days ahead aren't just markers on a calendar, but the final corridor before a gate seals shut? The choice is always present. Step willingly through the threshold or risk being swept along by currents stronger than any resistance. August's early days don't merely hint at change. They demand it, with a force that leaves no room for pause. Some decisions wait on the shelf for months, collecting dust until a sudden surge sweeps them off and demands an answer. Lately, time itself seems to have dropped its slow pace, spinning forward with a kind of reckless permission that doesn't leave space for hesitation. This is not the era for second-guessing or hoping for signals in the clouds. If a crossroad has lingered in the background, the landscape is shifting it front and center. For some, this week is the split second they walk away from what once felt like bedrock. Others leap toward something that once sent chills down their spine. The strangest part is how many, without a single word or plan, let inertia decide the path. Sometimes, silence and stalling carry as much weight as bold action. That's the climate right now. The energy refuses neutrality. It's threading new patterns quickly, with or without conscious direction. If the steering wheel isn't gripped, the river's flow decides the destination, and the result isn't always comfortable. What would happen if no one made a move at all? Could that truly be safer? There's a peculiar tension these days, almost like walking down a corridor lined with mirrors, each one reflecting a possible version of tomorrow. That sense of being observed, not by strangers, but by some distant version of oneself, lingers in the air. Is there anyone else who senses that what comes next is already watching, quietly judging the choices unfolding in real time? This week doesn't have patience for those stuck on the fence. After the threshold is crossed, the landscape changes, and yesterday's options won't wait at the door. Change doesn't always ask for permission, it simply arrives, rearranging the scenery. August's story doesn't pause to see if anyone's packed, it ushers in the next act regardless of preparation. When the night sky swells with silver, it carries more than just light, it draws out what's been hiding in the corners. This particular lunar display feels less like a gentle glow and more like a spotlight, exposing details that used to blend into the background. No dramatic storm, just a clean, crisp clarity that slices through any lingering haze. Old emotional fog evaporates, and suddenly, a truth that was always there stands front and center. Some connections lose their mystery under this illumination, while others take on new meaning. Has anyone else noticed how sometimes, a single evening can rewrite months of confusion? This is not the season for rituals that leave everything as they found it. What unfolds under this moon changes perception at its core. Not because anyone acted out of turn, but because the lens itself is new. A familiar face, a trusted presence, or an old adversary may shift suddenly, not due to their actions, but because the observer has grown into a fresh vantage point. The unspoken finally speaks. Is it possible for someone to remain unchanged while every impression of them is rewritten? Sometimes, it takes just a word, an expression, or an unfamiliar silence for a connection to either strengthen, dissolve, or gently fade. The heart recognizes the moment before the mind can explain it. Not every shift is a breach. Some are revelations that have been waiting for the right clarity. Imagine a magnifier being placed over every interaction, revealing the subtle choreography beneath the surface. Suddenly, bonds feel different. Distance or nearness are no longer measured in miles or hours, but in resonance. Some who stood in the background now feel deeply linked, while others who never left the room seem impossibly far away. What if this isn't about losing or gaining, but about the internal compass swinging to match a new direction? This alignment isn't about subtraction, it's about clarity. The brightest phase of the moon doesn't just spotlight others, but tunes the whole inner world to match what's about to unfold next. Does anyone else wonder which ties are being woven tighter, and which are being gently set free? The morning arrives, and it's not just the sun that makes things brighter. Suddenly, the image formed the night before reveals hidden details that were never visible in daylight. What once seemed familiar, even predictable, now carries a new dimension, as if someone quietly rearranged the pieces of a painting. Has anyone else ever felt that overnight, the roles in life's play shift and the lines spoken by others take on different meaning? There's something unmistakable about the rhythm of August 8th. It's not just the shape of the date or some string of digits that catches the eye. It's the resonance, the strange hum of a moment designed to stand out. Not every day gets coded with intent, but this one feels carved out on purpose, as if the calendar itself built a window in the wall of routine. Triple patterns, these rare alignments, aren't about luck or myth, but about the kind of opportunities that don't slip by unnoticed. What's the mark this date will leave behind, and will anyone be present enough to remember where they were when it arrived? Consider the energy of sevens, not as decoration, but as a quiet tool that carves through pretense and noise. This isn't a number for blending into the crowd. It slices through confusion and builds a ladder straight to the unseen layers of thought and intention. Stack that force 3 times and the effect isn't just a whisper. It's a door swinging open, whether anyone's ready or not. Portals have no interest in waiting for invitations. Instead, they measure who's awake enough to walk through them before they close. Isn't it strange how sometimes opportunity just erupts without warning? A strange kind of velocity pulses on days like these. Time itself seems to fold, making space for tiny moments to echo outwards with unexpected weight. A brief conversation, a flash of clarity, or even a clumsy step forward can set off ripples that stretch well past the horizon. What comes into focus, spoken or not, seems to land with unusual speed. Outcomes chase their origins with barely a pause. There's no need to check for signs, because the moment itself is the sign. Anyone else ever notice how the air just feels charged, like reality is rewiring itself in real time? Every now and then, life sets up a crossroads and paints the answer in bold strokes. For anyone who's been stalling on a decision, this moment isn't a gentle nudge, it's a siren, blaring a cosmic yes. Mirrors don't lie on days like this. Whatever is projected into the world comes straight back, only amplified. It's hard to ignore when the universe dials the volume up, making every intention more obvious and every choice more impactful than usual. Hasn't everyone had a day where the feedback loop seemed almost immediate? Intensity rises when what doesn't belong is still held too tightly. Days with this kind of charge bring old baggage to the surface, multiplying what's unresolved. If irritability, anxiety, or restlessness flares, it isn't random. It's a spotlight, zeroing in on what needs to be released for the next step to unfold. Is anyone surprised when unfinished business makes itself known just before a breakthrough? Sometimes, that surge of discomfort is just the final barrier, one last shadow to dissolve before stepping into the next story. Some days act like tuning forks, amplifying whatever signal the mind sets loose into the world. When the air vibrates with rare alignment, deliberate intent becomes a catalyst, not through elaborate practices or rehearsed affirmations, but through pure clarity. This isn't about traditional ideas of manifesting. It's the raw gravity of attention calling future outcomes closer with each subtle pulse. Call it what you will, portal, synchrony, statistical anomaly, but certain moments ask for presence. When intention matches the hum of the day, even distant possibilities begin to shimmer at the edge of reach. Does anyone else feel the difference when a day seems to be listening, almost daring reality to respond? True guidance rarely arrives in the middle of commotion. It's more likely to slip into the spaces left behind when distractions fade. During periods like these, clarity won't burst forth in a crowd or under fluorescent lights. It settles into the silence, slips between the cracks of busyness, and lands softly where quiet is welcomed. There might be a sudden urge to skip plans or retreat from the usual circle, not as a sign of disconnect, but as preparation for a download that requires full bandwidth. Empty space isn't a void, it's a freshly prepared field, waiting to receive new seeds. Sometimes, drifting isn't losing ground, it's clearing space for something essential. Periods of quiet can feel unsettling, especially for those accustomed to filling every moment, every gap, with connection and conversation. But this isn't isolation for its own sake. Overextending to keep others comfortable can muddle the frequency meant to be received. Filling the air with idle talk or habitual check-ins only clouds the signal that's trying to break through. In these rare, hushed stretches, distraction is the enemy and stillness is the guide. What if the most important meeting of the week is not on any calendar, but with the voice that's waited patiently under all the noise? When everything grows quiet, it's not a punishment, it's an invitation to tune in at a deeper wavelength. Sometimes, the only real requirement is to remain, to breathe, to notice what's emerging in the hush. August arrives not merely as a shift in weather, but as the silent closure of stories that no longer fit the shape of the spirit. It's a month known, in more than one esoteric tradition, not for beginnings, but for the unweaving of what's already served its season. There's a kind of subtle gravity to this time, a reputation that slips quietly through mystical calendars as the era of unraveling, when cords that once felt permanent begin to loosen, sometimes suddenly, sometimes in silence. This isn't the sort of finale that gets broadcast or declared. The real endings this season are internal, a gentle hush, a private acknowledgement whispered by the core self long before the mind is ready to agree. Closure isn't always an event. Sometimes it's a realization, a quiet certainty that an old agreement, habit, or connection has simply reached its expiration date. This second week of August is especially charged with that sense of invisible unraveling. It's as if certain pacts made in old chapters, agreements with people, patterns, and outgrown ambitions, begin dissolving, not through loss, but through quiet completion. How often has anyone noticed that what once felt binding eventually transforms into a gentle letting go? Strange signs start to appear when this release process kicks in. Vivid dreams featuring faces long forgotten, moments of nostalgia sparked by random triggers, or feelings that seem too big for the context, they're all signals of deep threads being loosened. Sometimes, there's an unexplainable urge to step away from pursuits or people that once brought meaning. Waves of unexplained sadness may roll in, or goals that once fueled determination suddenly lose their spark. This isn't a collapse, it's a gentle dismantling. Ever noticed how a motivation can vanish overnight and leave a sense of relief rather than regret? Letting go, especially during times like these, isn't a surrender or a retreat. It's an alignment with who is now emerging. Sure, there's discomfort in the process. Old identities, even the painful ones, offered structure and belonging for a time. Yet these roles were never meant to last forever. They were pages in the larger manuscript. This week is less about mourning what's fading, and more about honoring each version that once carried the journey forward. Sometimes it helps to ask, were these ever meant to be permanent, or were they just milestones on the way to something greater? The illumination brought by the full moon on the 6th is less a dramatic event than a spotlight on what's ready to be cleared away. Under its radiance, the shadows cast by old guilt, routines, or fears come into stark relief. Finally, their edges visible, their stories complete. This lunar light doesn't just expose, it offers a chance to sort and to release, even as the mind may resist. What if harvest is not just about gathering, but about releasing what no longer feeds the spirit? The right question now isn't what failed, but what has finally served its time. This week's atmosphere buzzes with heightened energy, unraveling old bonds, purging pent-up emotions, inviting sacred quiet. None of these gifts will take root if daily routines are overloaded, if the system is in overdrive, or if boundaries are porous. Safeguarding inner calm isn't about self-indulgence, it's a sacred practice. Now is the time to redraw the map of what gets attention and access, to honor what truly deserves energy. Sometimes that means declining the meeting that can wait, or carving out an evening for pure restoration. It might mean letting go of the urge to over-explain to those who never honored limits. Each no becomes a yes redirected inward, a conscious investment in the soul's vitality. Boundaries show up in the details, reserving a block of hours for that persistent passion project, requesting undisturbed quiet after sunset, or exchanging shallow chatter for one genuine conversation. These are not mere acts of self-care, they are markers that shape the trajectory of a life. Every time a boundary is fortified, it signals to the cosmos a new standard for what is allowed in. The world, in turn, reflects that standard back, matching frequency with frequency, drawing in what resonates. This week, energy must be spent with intention, as carefully as spending savings. When resources are scattered on what doesn't serve, depletion follows close behind. There's a real need now for rooting, creating limits, holding space, staying grounded, because the changes on the horizon will demand clarity and strength, not exhaustion. Has anyone ever noticed how the months that demand the most often offer the most, but only to those who arrive prepared? Near the week's end, a quiet click will replace the chaos. No grand declaration, no celebration, just a gentle landing, the aftermath of emotional release and silent reflection. After the build-up and the letting go, clarity will settle in naturally. There's a certain rhythm to weeks like these. Pressure mounts, release follows, and the fog lifts. In that clarity, the mind stops grasping for validation. The body simply recognizes what is real. Stillness after transformation rarely announces itself. There's a subtle shift, deeper breaths around those who support growth, unease around what's misaligned, not as anxiety but as certainty. A gentle but resolute sense of, this isn't for me anymore, surfaces, not with fanfare but with finality. When the inner truth finally lands, it doesn't demand proof. It settles, quietly anchoring itself. By week's end, a strange reversal occurs. Instead of striving for balance, alignment seems to drift in, quietly taking its seat. After all the lessons, the separations, and the bold decisions, the transformation isn't about the next action, but about the person who emerges on the other side, an upgraded version, with new instincts and deeper presence. Suddenly, old patterns seem to lose their grip. The subtleties of energy, once missed, become audible before words are even spoken. The internal compass, once spinning in uncertainty, finds its direction and holds steady.